Hello, Shasnivites. Today, we will go deeper into the interesting topic of breaking the principles. What happens is that in a given position, at times, there can be more than one way, more than one positional principle that you can follow. So, in such situations, how should we make a decision? Which positional principle should we follow? Because if we follow one of the principles, then the other one will be broken. So, which one should we give the priority? Should we sometimes go against one positional principle to make some other principle work to take advantage of the opponent's weaknesses? So, we'll try to uncover these with the help of some examples. So this is the first position. Now it is white to play. So quite an interesting position. White's are down a pawn, but at the same time, white is slightly ahead in development because the knights have been developed and white has this bishop developed. Although the bishop is not that active, but still. So since white's on a pawn, white should try to play a bit actively to create some activity. So, what are some other things that we can notice? Of course, black has also not completed the development. Black's king is in the center. Same is case with white. So now, one very interesting move in this position seems to be. So we can play queen a4 check. What's the idea behind queen a4 check? So, of course, we are giving a check and we are attacking this knight. So, we are basically improving our queen's position with a tempo. So, seems good. Of course, we are not winning a piece in that position because black can play knight c6 and c6 and block that. But one maybe can say that okay, we improved the queen's position. The knight that was in the center, it has to go back, and then maybe after that we can maybe we can play bishop b5 to put some more pressure. So there can be some interesting ideas. So quite an interesting move. So improving the queen's position with a tempo. So yeah, not a bad move, but it's very important that when we see one move that is positionally fine, but we should not be like, okay, that's the only choice. No, there can be something else that might give us some better options. So even though it is so our king is in the center, but so is the opponent. So we should also try to look at from that perspective. That opponent's development has not been completed and their king is in the center, and it's our move to play, by the way. So we have that advantage. So can we do something to take advantage of that king in the center and their lack of development? And if you go slightly more in depth, then you will see that you can do something to take advantage of that and make their king weaker. So and, that will give you bigger advantage than developing the queen with a tempo after queen a4 check would do. So what you can do in this position is you can play knight takes d4. So you are not developing see. So here we are breaking two positional principles. One is that we did not develop our queen with a tempo on a4. And second, we are also releasing the tension. So what we are doing is we are helping our opponent in centralizing the queen. But there is another reason. So the point is that we want to play bishop b5 check. What's the point behind bishop b5 check? Yeah, targeting that king in the center. So of course, if the king moves, that's a blunder because if king goes to d8, then we can have like bishop g5 check or bishop a5 check, and this queen will be gone. So they'll have to play bishop d7, but not a problem. We can play bishop takes d7, king takes d7. Now look at the king in the center, and then first of all, before attacking our opponent's king, it's extremely important that we need to make our king safe. So you can play castle, and then even though black's still a pawn, but look at that king, and it's going to be extremely weak. They can develop their bishop to d6, but that's fine. We can just play queen c2. What is our idea? We want to put the queen on f5 and increase the pressure. So let's say if black offers exchange of queens, no, we are not going to exchange the queens in this position. Opponent's king is too weak, and we are down a pawn. Time to play queen b3. Put pressure on this pawn. Opponent can play b6. We can just develop our rook with tempo. Once again, offering exchange of queens. No, we're not going to do that. Queen s3 check, removing the queen. From there, with a tempo, bringing another rook into the game. This is just too much for black to handle. Look at their king. Look at our active pieces. So two positional principles were broken when we played 1924. One is that we did not go for improving the queen's position with a tempo, and we released the tension and helped our opponent in improving the queen's position. But why did we do that? Because we recognize that opponent's king is in the center and we are able to weaken it further by bishop b5 check, and then it would not be possible for them to castle. So chess is a complicated game, and at times there is going to be clash of positional principles, and it's very important for you to decide that which principle to break for the other one to work, and which one gives you the bigger advantage. Now, let's go for the next position. So this is white to play here. Now, the material is equal here. Mm, but both kings are in the center. So the most natural move, of course, seems to be let's just castle and then make the king safe. Of course, not a bad move in this position. So you can castle and then black can play maybe something like bishop b7, developing the bishop, and then they have option of castling on the king side or queen side, and the game goes on. So uh, this is what we can do, and this is the opening phase of the game. So king safety is very important. So castle is not going to be a bad move. Yeah, but it's very important that we should try to look beyond that. So again, so before making your king safe, is there something that you can do? Because the bishop is going to come to b7 and control this important diagonal. So before black's able to complete the development, before black's able to make their king safe, can we actually try to do something? So once again, it doesn't mean that every time you break the principles, but you should not just follow it automatically, right? You should not be like, okay, let me just, I see castle, I see my king in the center, let me just castle. No, we should try to be a bit flexible with this. So in this position, um, if you look at it, then there is an option for white to put pressure on black before castling. So what can be done in this position is we can improve this knight's position and centralize it. So knight e4, what we did, we were putting pressure on this bishop. So capturing that bishop would not only help us in getting the double bishop advantage, but also help us in making black's pawn structure bad. Black would in fact get double isolated pawns in the center, and that's not good for them. So we can just do this, and yeah, even after queen takes d6, we can just exchange, and after c takes d6, they get double isolated pawns. And even if c takes d6, we can now make our king safe. We have double bishop advantage, and black has a double isolated pawn, so we can try to put pressure later on. We can play something like maybe queen d4, rook a d1, or queen d2, rook a d1 solely, but steadily you can put pressure. So the important thing in this position was that White's king was in the center, but it should not be like, okay, let's immediately castle. Yeah, we want to make our king safe, but we should also be open to look for some other opportunities that might arise because of some weaknesses in opponent's position. And knight e4 is one of those opportunities. Let's say after knight e4, if so, we have to do some calculation. That's very important. We should not be in a rush. So there is this move knight takes e4. So they are giving up the knight. So if we capture, then there is queen takes e4. Now in this position, we can play queen d5, attacking the rook, attacking the knight, and defending this knight. And black will lose material after this. So that is not working. Let's say after knight e4, if black decides to play bishop c5, removing the bishop. So black's like, okay, you can capture this, but at least my pawn structure won't get back. But we have queen d5, attacking this and attacking this. And if they try to defend this, then bishop takes c7. It's not just about the pawn. It's that the queen side has become weaker. This pawn has become an isolated pawn, and white is just doing much better. So if castle, we can just take the bishop, and if this, then bishop d6. We'll win the second pawn as well. We'll have double bishop advantage. Clearly a better position. So in this position, we did not make the king safe. We in fact made the move with an already developed piece, that is the knight, but we had a specific reason for that. So if you have specific reason and you're sure that because of that you are able to get bigger advantage than the normal move, then at times you can break the positional principles. All right, now let's go for the next position. So this is uh, black to play here. Now, quite an interesting position. The material is equal. So black's behind in development because this bishop on c8 has not yet been developed. If I talk about white, then white has this bishop that is on the outpost square on d6. So it's quite active, of course. Another thing that I see in white's position is that they have these doubled isolated pawns. Although it's a good question if I can put pressure on them because my pieces are not that active enough. So what should black do in this position? Now, a natural move seems to be bishop d7, just developing the bishop. But if we go more in depth, is it actually helping us a lot? Because the bishop gets developed, no doubt. The bishop, we can say that the bishop is now developed, but what exactly is it doing on d7? It's still blocked on this diagonal because of this knight. It is still blocked on this diagonal because of this pawn. And then what happens is that one thing that we have to remember is our opponent has control of this semi-open file. So if bishop d7, we have to be a bit careful about some ideas like rook fb1 or rook ab1, and they can try to put pressure on this pawn as well. So it's not just as easy as okay, let's just develop my bishop and then get it done. Our opponent can do something. So what we need to do, we need to try to activate our pieces a bit more. That is, black's position feels a bit cramped. And an idea that you can do to try to activate your pieces is by playing b6. So how does b6 help you? So because after c takes b6, a takes b6, you get this semi-open file for your rook. You can put pressure on this isolated pawn. Another thing, the bishop can get active through this. Now, but there's a problem. We had identified that these were the weaknesses in opponent's position, double isolated pawns. So, while trying to get some activity on the queen side, while trying to activate our pieces there, one of the things that we will have to do is that we will need to allow white to exchange this pawn. So they won't be left with that c5 isolated pawn. But that's fine. So white's able to get rid of one of their weaknesses. But we are able to gain some counterplay on the queen side. And more importantly, the most active piece in white's position, the bishop on d6. After b6, c takes b6, a takes b6. When that exchange happens, the bishop is not anymore defended by this pawn because the pawn doesn't exist. And after that, so it won't be on the outpost square. So the bishop that was, so bishop won't be as much active. So by playing b6, of course, we are allowing our opponent to exchange their c5 isolated pawn. We are allowing to get rid of the double isolated pawns, but at the same time, we are able to gain activity on the queen side, and that d6 bishop is not that strongly placed anymore. So that gives us, so when we do that comparison, then it becomes clear that b6 gives us the upper hand. So this is what should be played. And then after this, as I said, semi-open file. These ideas can be there. This bishop is not that well placed since the c5 pawn is not there, and that gives us the advantage. So by the way, bishop a6 is a serious threat. So white can play something like rook f d1. By the way, rook f b1. Also, they have to be a bit careful. Attacking this pawn seems good, but then black has a very nice move. Knight d8. What does knight d8 do? Knight d8 attacks this bishop, and this bishop is unblocked. So what happens after bishop g3? If this bishop is defended, bishop f5, and black wins an exchange. Let's say, so if white plays rook f d1, no problem at all. We can play queen d8. It's time to remove the bishop from d6. The bishop goes to g3, improving the knight's position, knight c5. Then what? Coming back, queen f6. What's the plan? We can try to put the bishop here, and then we can put some pressure, or we can try to put the knight on e4 and increase the pressure here. We can also try to play bishop a6 later and then do something. So as you can see, how the position has changed. How? Because of this whole thing, how that bishop is not there anymore, because of which the black pieces have become active. So we exchanged one of the weaknesses of white, but in return we got a lot of piece activity, because of which we can attack more weaknesses of white. So b6 actually broke the principle of. So we are helping our opponent in getting rid of their weakness, but as I've explained, we are getting a lot more in return. Now, let's go for the next position. So this is a black to play here. Mm, quite an interesting position. So blacks are hidden development. Black has pawn in the center, while white does not have. Blacks, by the way, down is down a pawn as well. So we should try to play actively. So now there is some tension between the knights. This knight could go to knight takes e6 and get the bishop. This seems like an interesting option, but since we are down a pawn, so it's important that we should try to play a bit actively to try to take advantage of our opponent's weaknesses. So now, one move that I see in this position is that I can try to develop my piece with a tempo. So that bishop is undeveloped. Seems good, but we have to be a bit careful because bishop g4 is a blunder. White can play knight takes f6 with a check, by the way. And then if we recapture, then our bishop will be gone. So that doesn't seem that great option. Now, what can we do? So before white's able to complete the development to keep up the pressure, and since we have a pawn in the center, we can do something to increase the pressure. That is, we can start with knight takes e4. So once again, we are breaking the principle of maintaining the tension. We are exchanging this knight and allowing that bishop to get active, but it's we have thought more. We want to keep up the pressure. We have center control. We can create some ideas on the king side. So the idea that we have is we can play f5. So pushing on the king side with a tempo attacking the bishop. And the problem for white after that is the bishop can go to d3 or f3. But how we can continue? We can play e4 further. So gain more space on the king side with a tempo. So initially, we break the principle of maintaining the tension. We are the one who are releasing the tension, but we are able to put pressure on white's king side with a tempo, with the pawn pushes, and that gives us the upper hand. So knight takes e4, bishop c4, we can play f5, bishop f3, e4. And white has to save the bishop, bishop e2. Not a problem. We can play queen h4, improving the queen's position, putting pressure on this. Let's say if white plays g3, not a problem. We can play queen h3. And as you can see, white's king side has become extremely weak. We have ideas of f4, f3. We have ideas of rook f6, rook h6. And this is not a fun position for white to play. So we release the tension, we broke that principle, but we are able to push with the pawns to gain more space on the king side, to restrict white's pieces more on the king side, and then get the upper hand. Now, let's go for the next position. So this is white to play here. Now, from material perspective, white is up a pawn. So, of course, that's a good thing. But black has the knight in the center. There's some pressure on this pawn as well. So we have to be a bit careful. This bishop is also we have to be a bit careful about that. So we can say there is so white is better of course because of the extra pawn, but we have to be a bit careful. So about how to progress further without giving additional counterplay to black. And what we can do in this position is, once again, there is some tension. So there can be a thought that, okay, there is some tension, but b takes c4 might not be the biggest threat because after b takes c4, we are attacking the queen. Maybe if this pawn comes under pressure, we can play bishop takes e5 and then eliminate that knight so this pawn won't be under pressure. Let's just try to maintain the tension and then do something else. Yes, that's there. But there is another thing that we have the pawn majority. We are up a pawn. So we have these four pawns versus three pawns of black on the queen side. So whenever we have the pawn majority, what should we try to do? Yes, we should try to create a pass pawn. So one is maintaining the tension, an important principle. Another is creating a pass pawn, another important principle. So we have to break one principle to go for the other. So here we are releasing the tension, but we are able to create a pass pawn. How? C takes b5, a takes b5, and then a4. That was the plan. And if b takes a4, so then we can play b takes a4. The rook has gotten active, and we have got a pass pawn on the queen side. So the pressure that black had on the queen side is not there anymore, not as much as before, and we are able to create a pass pawn. So after a4, let's say if the opponent plays b4, not a problem. We can put the knight on b5. It's on an outpost square now. This pawn is a protected pass pawn. This pawn is under pressure. Much better. So in this position, one principle was maintaining the tension, and on the other hand, it was about creating a pass pawn since we have the pawn majority on the queen side, and we broke the principle by releasing the tension, but at the same time, we created a pass pawn. So I hope with this discussion, you got more perspective about comparison of positional principles and at times breaking one positional principle to gain the upper hand in the other one. So it's not that simple at times, but if you can make a good comparison, then decision making would become easier for you.